Bienvenidos back at the casa con mis amigas and this bitch.
I like this new angle that you're at. I like that there's not
I
just a white wall behind you.
I have decided today you get everything that is me in my home because a bitch is fucking tired. You know, like
Yeah.
at work we're launching a new website and I'm just like, I'm tired.
I know.
We're just gonna be like this, and I'm comfy. So like, that's it. And my ring light's broken. So yeah, little
That's not
things. So
fun.
you get me in my Nespresso coffee bar behind me.
I would love some Nespresso coffee bar right now. I'm like running on pure fumes. It's been
Adrenaline?
nonstop these last couple of weeks. Yeah, it's like adrenaline. Like even last week I was in New York and it was like from the second the plane, and I took the 6 a.m. flight, but from this, and Blake Lively had her amended complaint that dropped at 11:59 the night before, and I was up until 12:30 and then had to
Then you
leave for the
called
airport
me.
at 3.
How dare you call me to ask me things?
It was just, that was yesterday, but I'm just saying, like in the past week, it's been like non-stop. And even today, I was like, I just finished taping Popcorn Planet, which was streaming live on YouTube, and my brain is on, but we're doing it. Lots
Brain
of
is
words.
on, but she is not.
Yeah.
Damn. Okay.
How are you?
Wow.
How was your weekend? What's new?
Honestly, parents came to town. Friend was in town.
Fun.
Other friend was in town. I played musical chairs with people. So, to all the girls who understand that pain, thank you. Number one. Number two, it's a lot when your parents have never visited you and you've lived in a city for 6 years and you're like,
They both came to visit you?
my dad came and my stepmom. So they
Okay.
have never been. They were like, we're the first visitors for your apartment. I'm like, you might be the last because I might have to move because of my landlord increasing the rent. So we're also looking at properties, just living the daily life of another gay boy on the west side.
Let's move into a house together.
Let's not, because you won't leave downtown. And you have 2 dogs who I also will have to commingle with my dog.
Yeah.
This doesn't sound like enough space.
We would need a big house.
You bet your ass we would. We could find one. It's just 10 grand for rent, like just little things.
I mean, well, we pay already. It's like if we splitting that,
Join
it's probably
forces.
not too far. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I know you called me yesterday asking about, no, Sunday, about all the
Sunday.
Blake Lively stuff. You have become a Blake Lively account, like a real Stan account, it seems like.
I mean, I wouldn't call me a Stan account, but I definitely am covering the case.
Your obsession. No, I'm kidding. Like you've been pumping it out. Zach was calling me. He's like, "What does this mean? Do they have to put an amended complaint
about
out? Why aren't they?"
The Hollywood Reporter, and about their editor's note and their disclaimer, because I mean, and it's taken up a lot of surprisingly more traction than I was expecting with the revisions that they've written in their article covering Justin Baldoni's Baha'i faith and the connection to Jenny Slate. And I happened to pick up on the changes of this one paragraph, this one very important paragraph. And so I called Andy and I'm like, okay, I have questions. Like my understanding, I even called my other friend. Yeah, it was Sunday. And I even called my other friend who is a reporter or an editor at the Daily Mail. And I was like, okay, I'm trying to understand, like, my understanding is that when there is a change to an article that has already been published, they should need to disclose that at some point. And then luckily Andy referred me to the disclaimer on the publication's website, and he was like, read what that says. And I was like, oh, it actually says that they don't have to disclose their policies, that they don't have to disclose anything if they don't want to. If they make any corrections or changes, that's at their own discretion and they don't have to disclose that to you. But the internet is a thing now and we can screenshot things, and I happen to have had a screenshot of the original paragraph from that article that I had sent to my friend Donna. And that's how this whole thing started. And now like it got picked up everywhere that the Hollywood Reporter did this. And I was like, oh, I wasn't expecting this to take off.
And Billy Bush fucking comes out of the wings and says, hello, Zach Peter.
Yeah.
You have been covering this, and I've been following all this through you.
Yeah. And then we got picked up in Newsweek this week.
What a time. What a fucking time.
Yeah, they picked up my quotes about Meghan Markle, joking about her being a white supremacist, which was a joke, and the headline was a bit out of context, but it
Yeah,
was a
Miami
joke.
Herald. Yeah, everybody was like, "Here's this thing." I'm like, "Well, you never know what gets picked up."
It's funny. I sent it to Stu, and he saw the headline. He's like, "LOL, that's hilarious." And then I think he opened the article. And he's like, "Wait, that's us. They're quoting us. Like that's the clip from the podcast, the Pop Report last week." And I was like, "Yeah, I guess the social clip. They became aware of it, and so they wrote a whole article about it."
A whole damn thing. Well, obviously, if you love the Pop Report, you should subscribe if you want to hear more fun quotes and other things that come up that gets picked up in the press, because we are the press. Cardi don't need more press. We are out here, and I think it is a nice time for us to look at some Spotify comments from the last episode, because you never know what everyone's going to respond to when it comes to things that we say, shit Zack says. So let's get into some comments from the last episode.
Here we go.
So we are going through some changes. We have a new studio we're prepping, unbeknownst to us, just kind of sprung up. So until then, we are a little bit in limbo. But in the meantime, these comments, gracefully read from home. This one comes from E Money. Zack and Andy have such fun, playful camaraderie. Ooh, that's how you spell it. Okay.
That's nice.
Love the synergy they both have, even with a guest. Not easy to do. You both are my favorite type of podcaster.
Yay, that's very sweet. Thank
Ooh,
you.
Okay. Kind Kid said, loved this. It was really fun. Love the gorgeous Irishman. Is Stu Irish?
Yeah, like from Ireland, yeah.
Work. That tracks. You know, I had to think about that for a second. This other comment is from Marley. It says, I'm sorry, Zack. Zack spelled with a Z-A-K. Different, but same. You have such a powerful, strong personality and presence that I feel bad when you really go in on people. You made me laugh a lot today. Keep it light and humble. Love you guys. And yes, Andy is OMG. I would respond to his furniture ad too. Furniture ad? Okay.
You must have made some sort of...
I must have sat on the couch and said, living spaces.
Living
or something of the sort.
Or Wayfair.
Yeah. Yeah. Who knows? Wayfair. Who knows? They sound similar. I'm surprised people are not talking about how you could potentially go onto wayfair.com instead of looking up Wayfarer from Justin Baldoni, but that's a whole other thing.
Oh, they do. At the beginning, when this all started, everyone's like, every time you say Wayfair, I think of the furniture website, or I didn't know Justin Baldoni ran the furniture website, and I was like, shut up. Like, they're just spelled, they just sound the same.
They just sound the same. Why do they keep doing it? We do have some Apple reviews as well. This is from Alicia13086 saying, love them both, but Andy doesn't let Zack talk enough.
Oh.
Sorry, I'm a
all
stan
I do
for
is
Zack.
talk.
Love you too, Andy. Yeah, bitches, all
Literally,
he does is talk.
that's all I do is talk. I don't know
you should
how
listen
that's...
to Zack on the phone because he's quiet as fuck. And then, like, on the podcast, he's like, rip. And then he's like, I'm fine.
Most
You're waiting
people
for him
don't,
to speak.
yeah.
He's just like let me let them speak and let me see how much space I can have empty and not say anything.
Yeah,
That's the type of phone talker you are.
People don't realize I'm a lot more muted in person.
Muted is the correct word. Mute.
Yeah.
Things that are not muted are hot headlines, though. They are ripping. They are roaring. You have a couple things in here, and I'm sure you're dying to get to a few of these, but I watched the SAG Awards this weekend. There's a couple things that have happened that came from the SAG Awards, a couple things that have happened otherwise, some things from White Lotus and whatnot, but what is your first hot headline you want to get to?
Okay, this is probably going to be super niche, but I was super interested in this. So I'm a Boy Meets World fan. Okay,
I'm not.
Ben Savage, Danielle Fishel, Corey and Topanga used to love watching Boy Meets World. And then I did not watch Girl Meets World, which was the Disney Plus reboot that came years later, but I did appreciate the nostalgia. So the cast of Boy Meets World, Will Friedle, Danielle Fishel, and then one of the Lawrence brothers, I think Sean. hosts this new podcast called Pod Meets World, and it's basically a recap podcast. And I guess it's not that new because they've been doing it for a few years now. But so it's basically, I mean, and this is kind of happening with all those old shows, right?
There's
Like
a lot
they
of
have
them.
a
There's a lot
Charmed
of recap
rewatch.
podcasts.
Yeah.
As Classified had one.
Yeah, I think they don't still have one.
They're coming back.
Oh, how many fucking episodes of Ned's Declassified can they recap?
You know, they asked the same thing about the Wizards of Waverly pod and all the other ones, but you know they can find a way to extend it.
Well, that's where we're at. And so we have, they decided to bring on Danielle Fishel decided she wanted to have on Maitland Ward. And so Maitland used to be on, it was the later seasons of Boy Meets World. And so she played, not Morgan, what was her name? She played, what was the name?
Sure, you got it.
Hold on. I literally just had it in my brain. Who did she play on? Rachel. Okay, so the redhead, Rachel. She played Rachel when they went into the college years after they graduated high school.
I have not seen a single episode of this, so you're explaining everything to me, no problem.
Yes. Okay, so
yes.
Danielle Fisher, she also used to host that one show that was like a spoof of The Soup for the Style Network.
Joe McHale.
Yeah,
Wow.
with Joe McHale. Well, so anyway, they were doing an episode recapping the old episodes of Boy Meets World when Rachel's character gets introduced, and her name is Maitland. She came on the podcast, and apparently we didn't know this, but Maitland and Danielle Fishel had beef. And so they end up getting into it while they're on the podcast. Yep. They get into it, and Variety did this whole article because, and I was trying to understand, I was listening to the episode and reading all the recaps online and like trying to understand what the actual issue is. So Maitland, yes, she was on Boy Meets World, and I believe she even made a cameo on Girl Meets World, but has since become more popular in the adult entertainment world, which to me is probably one of the reasons maybe Danielle Fisher was like, oh, I don't want to be associated with her now. And so there was some distance. They didn't really stay in touch after all these years. Maitland claims that when she came on the set of Girl Meets World, that Danielle Fishel was a little icy towards her. Danielle was like, oh my God, the set of Girl Meets World was nothing like Boy Meets World. And it was just, she seems to describe it as like a toxic environment. And she didn't have a great time filming the reboot, which was Girl Meets World. And so Maitland was like, well, you were a bitch when I came on that set and you weren't very nice to me. And they haven't spoken since. And so this is the first time that they're having any sort of connection and communication is on this podcast. And for the first like hour, it seemed pretty good, right? They were talking and reminiscing and reliving. And then out of nowhere, Danielle says, I have a question for you.
Yes.
And it's really just total random pivot, okay? Because I was listening to the conversation and I would rewind it and try to like figure out how we got here. But Maitland was talking about her work in the adult entertainment world. And then suddenly Danielle's like, well, I have a question for you.
Oh, God.
Do you hate us? And I
That
was
sounds
like,
like something you would ask.
right? Like, this is a very me
This
thing.
is like a let me get you off the rails and really coot up.
Like, let me wait an hour where we're having really nice banter and then suddenly just cut in with the jugular. And then Maitland's like, no, I don't hate you guys. And she's like, really? Because you seem to shit on us pretty often in our podcast. You say that it's very toxic and we're mean. And she's like, well, I didn't say that you were mean. And she's like, give me an example of when we were mean. And they just get into this back. And I'm like, oh my God, like this came out of left field. And then Danielle's just like, yeah, like you seem to, every time we have something, you know, that makes a headline on the podcast, suddenly you're doing a TMZ interview about it. And she's just like, well, what do you expect me to do? TMZ finds me on the streets. And everybody, we all know, and Danielle calls her out for this. She's like, really? Because, and let's be honest, Danielle was the bigger star now. And even at the time, like she's a bigger name than Maitland, who had like a small role on this show, right? As Rachel. And so Danielle's like, really? Because that's funny. Like the TMZ doesn't just find me on the streets. They don't find me at my house. Like I'm not running into them every single time there's a headline that I'm trying to, you know, piggyback off of, and they're just going back and forth about like, well, you unfriended me on Facebook all these years ago, and I wrote you a really long message, and I didn't know you wrote me the message until I found out about it years ago, and well, you invited me on the podcast, and well, I asked for your phone number so that we could, bury the hatchet off camera, and then you suddenly decided you wanted to come on the podcast to make it a ratings, but you wanted the ratings to skyrocket, and so here we are, the ratings are skyrocketing. You wanted to do this on the podcast. We could have done this outside of the podcast, and you wanted to do this on the podcast for the ratings. And then, funnily enough, Maitland did her TMZ interview today after the podcast. So I kind of feel like she definitely is having her moments and enjoys having these moments and leans into them often. But it was just wild, the fact that they were going just at each other. The last time I remember listening to something, one was like me and Jeff on Disaster Daters last season, but the last like big one on like a live interview was on the Jenny McCarthy show when Tara Reid came on, and Jenny and Tara were just going at each other about saggy tits and knees and plastic surgery, which was also wild. But this was like that for people that may remember Boy Meets World, which may be a bit more of a niche audience, but it was wildly riveting.
That is a riveting time, honestly. That is also wild to just like... I don't know any of these people that well. I was not a Boy Meets World person. I did not get into it as a child. I'm sorry. Sorry to that man, as Kiki says. But that is also wild to go into the podcast being like, I'm waiting for this moment just to be like, let me rip.
Yeah. It was very strange and like very thirsty, but I loved it.
Well, some other popular shows made some, I guess, like rounds in the headlines this past weekend. I saw one from SAG Awards that has a couple people coming back, which is the one you put in here about Kristen Bell and Leighton Meester. I also did not to get into Gossip Girl that much. Do I obviously know the narration of Gossip Girl is Kristen Bell? Like, yes. Do I know Leighton Meester was in Gossip Girl? Do I know that Blake Lively was in Gossip Girl? I think the SAG Awards did some fun little bits. This one, I think, is the one that people are talking about the most. Yeah. But what do you think?
Yeah, this was definitely like one of the biggest moments of the night. And so for people that aren't familiar with Gossip Girl, Kristen Bell she didn't have a role on the show. She wasn't one of the actresses on the show, but she even talks about how, I believe it was Veronica Mars that had just ended when Gossip Girl was beginning, and she pitched the producers like, listen, I know I'm too old to play one of these characters, but what if you make me the narrator? Because the whole premise of Gossip Girl, I didn't watch it. I actually tried to watch my first episode of Gossip Girl the other day, and I didn't get through it because
get that far.
Everything, Blake Lively's legal drama took precedent, but she is the narration. And so the whole premise of Gossip Girl is there's somebody that's stalking all of these kids on the Upper East Side, these wealthy kids on the Upper East Side. And so the narrator is Kristen Bell, who's Gossip Girl, and we later, by the end of the series, you find out who Gossip Girl is. But it's basically similar to like Pretty Little Liars, right? Where you have this anonymous person that's stalking all of them, and I guess there was a blog that was being written about all of their personal lives. Again, I don't know Gossip Girl that well.
I know who it was in the end. I know the full conundrum, but like...
Yeah. And so Kristen Bell revived her narration, or her role as the narrator at the SAG Awards as Gossip Girl, and then she ends up coming up to Leighton Meester, who was seemingly giving Kristen Bell tea about the other celebrities in the room. And so it was a very interesting nod, considering all of the drama surrounding Blake Lively and why they chose to lean into the Gossip Girl of it all, considering Blake Lively is not looking too hot in Hollywood right now and was definitely not at the SAG Awards.
Well, I think it's a little bit of a reach to say like it is a dig at Blake Lively. I think it's like Leighton and Kristen, they're on the show. They're not ever in the same room together. And so like I think Kristen did a lot of bits from everything that she was a part of, like Jason Segel and more. And I think she just like really tried to go in for anything that she was a part of. I didn't see it as much as like a Blake Lively dig, but I think it could have gone further to make a dig. I think it kind of landed flat as a bit for me. Like, oh my God, this is about food. Like, what are you doing? Like she mentions at one point. But I think like you could definitely insert a jab, like a full jab, but I think just because it was Gossip Girl and Blake Lively is a part of Gossip Girl, I didn't think it was something that was like directed towards her in my POV.
Maybe. I mean, there are all of the feud rumors with Leighton and Blake Lively and how they didn't get along. I mean, I think there could have very easily been a subtle nod to. I mean, Kristen Bell did make other references to other projects that she had been in the past. I just think, given the feud rumors with Leighton and Blake Lively and how they did not get along, and how Leighton is very much having her Hollywood moment right now with Adam Brody by her side, and Adam Brody's obviously the talk of the town right after Nobody Wants This on Netflix, which he co-starred in with Kristen Bell. I think that it may have been a subtle nod to Blake Lively in the fact that Blake was not in the room.
I don't think that, in my real honest opinion, Leighton and Adam just lost their fucking house. I don't think that they're thinking about anybody else around. They're like, we are.
If that was the case, then they wouldn't have showed up.
I mean, they have a nomination for Adam Brody. Like, he has things for the studio that they want contractually and more. And she's like, we have nothing. Like, we might as well just continue. But I don't think they want to start any shit. Number one, legally. Number two, like, just in the state of their lives. They're like, we just lost our home, probably. We don't want to add any more stresses in the mix.
I don't think there are any legal ramifications for them participating in this, but like, you have to know that if you're gonna make a nod at Gossip Girl, everybody's looking to pick apart everything related to Blake Lively. Even Anna Kendrick was just at the BAFTAs last week.
I saw your take on that. I don't even think that was a correlation to Blake Lively.
Well,
I think anything that like Blake Lively has touched, everyone's gonna say like, this is at Blake Lively. But I'm like,
exactly, and that's the point. Everything that has any sort of fabric to Blake Lively, people are going to pick apart. That's why I'm saying people are not. If you and I can recognize that anything even remotely close to Blake Lively is going to get picked up, you're going to tell me all of these people that know optics and that know how to put on these shows are not going to read in between those lines? Like, they absolutely know. The same way Ryan Reynolds knew that by going to SNL, they were going to hijack the night, and him making a joke was going to directly reference the scandal that's going on right now. Like, people are not that naive. And if we know that the audience is going to pick all of these things apart, then these people also know that the audience is going to pick it apart. And the fact that they still continue to lean into it, knowing that this is going to, feed the fodder, it's absolutely deliberate, in my opinion, because they know that people are going to pick up on it given the nature of the scandal.
I think they know that bitches are going to pick up on it. I don't think they're going to make any dig, though. I think they're going to know this is my time to be relevant and shine and like have my moment, but they're not going to make a subtle dig. I think they know the optics of like, it's going to be picked up regardless. So even if I don't do anything, that's the eyes. I don't disagree with you on like they're going to get a moment. They're going to get picked up. I don't think they're going to say anything whatsoever. Like,
I disagree and Kim Kardashian at SNL was the perfect example of that, because she could have participated in a skit, chose not to participate in a skit, could have done the same joke that Ryan Reynolds did, and it would have been a direct reference to Kanye, and Kim Kardashian chose to not participate in any of that. Ryan Reynolds hasn't been on SNL since 2009. He's not in any way relevant to current SNL, and he's not one of the forefront Tina Fey's, Maya Rudolph, like all those people that are at the, what that you think of when you think of SNL. He's not one of those people, so he didn't need to participate in these skits at all. I'm pretty sure if SNL wanted to lean into the Kanye controversy, Kim Kardashian could have very much made a dig or a nod or even a reference to Kanye in SNL, which she chose not to. That was a deliberate choice, and nobody talked about Kanye and Kim Kardashian as a result of her appearance at SNL. So people are hyper aware of these things. The audience is looking to pick apart every little thing. These people are aware of what the audience is looking for, and the fact that they lean into things, whether they're deliberately trying to take a shot or not, they know. Like, same thing with Anna Kendrick at the BAFTAs. She could have not done, there were a number of ways she could have handled that night that didn't make the direct, endorsement to directors. The same way, what was it, the Golden Globes? Or who was one of the directors came up, and when he won his award, and he was just like, this is a shout out to other directors, knowing that the director always gets final cut. And everybody picked up on that. thinking that that was a reference to Blake and Baldoni, because we know Baldoni didn't get his director's cut because Blake Lively ended up hijacking the project. People are way too savvy to be that naive to participate in these things and not think that it's going to get picked up. So them doing it is a deliberate decision.
I don't know, girl. I think everyone knows it's going to get picked up, but how far they want to go in is the real question. But
or you can just not. That's an option too. Kim Kardashian didn't.
That's Kim. It's
an option though, but it's an option. Leighton Meester could have said,
I don't think you can compare Kim and Kanye in this. That's a very different situation than what is Blake and Baldoni. Kanye is...
Leighton Meester could have absolutely said, Kristen Bell, thank you so much. I appreciate that you want to take a nod at Gossip Girl. Right now, I just lost my home in the fire. There's too much attention circulating Blake Lively. They're recirculating our past feud. I think the best thing for me would be to not participate in a skit. And also, it's not my night, it's my man's night. Adam Brody is, who I think I want to be the center focus of tonight. I don't need to participate in the skit. Leighton Meester could have absolutely turned down an opportunity to do that skit. Anna Kendrick could have absolutely...
Do you think that, though, you have to look at both sides? If you don't do it, if you do it, which one's like the less of two evils? It's like
if Anna Kendrick presented any other award, outside of Best Director, nobody would have been talking about this. If Leighton Meester didn't participate in that skit.
If you let a girl speak, because I apparently interrupt you too much. Blake and the Gossip Girl thing first. Like, you don't do it, you do it. It's going to be talked about either way. So it's like, how do you make the most of it? How do you do it best? The Anna Kendrick one is like, yes, there are checks and balances. Yes, there are processes. If you present in what category, it's not just up to her necessarily, but there are big conversations when it comes to these award shows of like what the producers want, what they specifically need. I think it's at the end of the day, like these people have to sit who are in these positions. What happens if I do and what happens if I don't, which is like, which path do I go down? And so everyone has a choice, but it's just like, what is the result of that action? If that makes sense.
Leighton Meester could have very much told the producers, I just lost my home in the fire. I don't want to be dragged into the drama with Blake Lively because everybody's already looking into our past feud. I would feel more comfortable if I didn't participate. And if she didn't participate, we wouldn't really be having a conversation about this outside of
that. You can't
outside of, wow, she looks incredible. She's having her moment. She's winning. But she decided to lean into Gossip Girl. And again, you're going to feed the fodder. Same thing with Anna Kendrick. Her team could have went back and said, listen, the nature of the allegations regarding Blake Lively's drama right now, we think that the optics would make this look a lot worse. And again, if Anna Kendrick had presented any other category that wasn't Best Director, we would not have been reading into it as much as we are right now.
And that's your opinion.
Yeah. And the reason we're talking about it is because they made these choices to participate in these bits.
You also brought up Kim, and there's been some news about Kylie. I saw you putting here for our hot headlines. What's the situation that happened with Kylie?
So one of her makeup artists, who I guess also has done makeup for J-Lo, who's done makeup for J-Lo and Kim Kardashian, and so Kylie, I guess, was really close to this particular makeup artist, Jesus Guerrero. He has suddenly passed away. I believe he was just in Dubai and ended up coming down with a pneumonia and very unexpectedly passed away. I mean, Kylie Jenner, I think the last photo she posted with him was February 12th. So to be on Instagram posting photos with him on the 12th, and then now we're on the 25th, and his family's now doing a tribute after his passing, and Kylie Jenner's she's covering the funeral expenses for him. So it was very sudden. It's very shocking. Yeah, it's crazy.
Very sad. Yeah. Like, overall very sad. A lot of these makeup artists, when they do work with people in this capacity, a lot of their life is around the celebrity. It's travel consistently. It's bringing the makeup kits onto whatever aircrafts and more. It can be very stressful. Sometimes they have multiple people they work for, but I do think that's very nice and respectful that Kylie's paying for the expenses, as, these people are very close to these celebrities. So it becomes very much like almost like some say a family, some say like an extended team. So it's very kind of a gesture that she was like able to do that for this person.
Yeah.
So sad though, too. But actually, tying into our stories, take a deep breath for a minute. That's a little sad. There are things that have been coming up when it comes to travel. It's funny enough for this week. I don't know if you've seen this headline or this story going around, but are you aware of what happens when people, sadly, this connection to this story, when people do pass on an airplane, do you know what happens?
When they pass on the airplane?
Mm-hmm.
How many people are passing on airplanes these days?
So it's actually, this is sad. It's quite frequent, but in our weird and strange stories of the week, this story has been covered by a couple other podcasts.
Okay.
I saw The Toast did something about it. I saw this before, even it like really made its rounds. But there are passengers who are speaking out about their experience sitting next to an unfortunately dead woman's body for 4 hours on a passenger who died on the flight. So first, obviously, this is a very sad story, and it's a very strange story to see and hear, but this is not uncommon. Mm-hmm. So something to tell you, since you haven't heard this, there was an incident that occurred on Qatar Airways between Australia and Italy. Okay. This couple was on the flight, and they were saying that they were forced to sit next to another passenger who sadly died halfway through the flight. Their names are Mitchell and Jennifer, and they were traveling from Melbourne to Venice when a woman was on board and she collapsed and unfortunately died. Now, when you think of what do you do if someone has died on a plane, it's like this happens, unfortunately. People do pass anywhere in the world. And so there are a set of protocols of what to do when someone is no longer living on an aircraft, because you are still on the plane, you are still in motion, you're still into your destination. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
It's kind of like, what do you do? Does the aircraft continue? Does it stop? This couple basically went on to say, after this person had passed, she was a bigger woman, and they had tried to, it says here, quote, wheel her up towards business class, which she was a quite large lady, and they couldn't get her through the aisle. When I tell you about the procedure, usually what goes through on a situation like this, people have passed many times. People have passed on airplanes through, I guess, like takeoff, through the landing, through mid-flight. And what the procedure is to most oftentimes bring them to the back of the plane as I hit the mic, the back of the plane, or at least an area that is
away,
non-interruptive of other passengers, the best of their capability.
Yeah.
Imagine, of course, there are full flights that happen. There are situations where there are not a lot of empty chairs, a couple different things. This couple said that the flight crew members placed the woman's body in a vacant seat next to the two of them.
Oh, no.
So they said, can you please move over? And they said, yeah, no problem. And the quote says, then they placed the lady in the chair I was in. So they said they had to sit. They said they had to sit next to this unfortunately deceased woman in their row for 4 hours. And usually when someone does pass, the procedure is obviously bring them away from any passengers if there's room, and place a blanket, unfortunately, cover them so it's not visible. Right. But they didn't have anywhere else, at least it seems, to place this person. But they said they sat next to this body for 4 hours on their flight. They said there were a few spare seats around, but they were just very confused with, like, why did you ask us to stay next to this body? Like, could you have moved us first? And so the couple said that they have not received any support of counseling, anything whatsoever. And so Qatar Airways was like, we obviously feel for this family of this victim, but, the process for handling incidents is under Qatar Airways to do something. And most times when this happens, they're issued vouchers, they're issued something for like their upcoming flights or for their travel. Like, this is a very traumatic experience for anybody, but this story has been making its rounds, and I want to hear your gut reaction to this. First of all, what would you have done if you were in this?
I would have said, fuck no, you're not putting the bitch next to me. Hell no. Number one, you better do some musical chairs. If there are a few open seats on the plane, then you do some musical chairs and you find us other seats. Even if we have to sit apart, but the lady needs the row, I don't care. But also, if she was too big to move to business class, then how did they move her into this seat? And if they could move her into the seat, why couldn't they move her to the back of the plane?
They said it was a little difficult to get her because she was a little bigger through the aisle. So it seems like this is where they ended up placing her.
They tucked her in the seat just fine.
It is just, I would have been mortified.
Oh my God. I am mortified. This poor couple. I mean, this poor woman that is deceased, may she rest in peace. But like this couple, like that's horrible.
Qatar spokespeople said, quote, "We apologize for any inconvenience or stress this incident may have caused." They also went on to add, quote, "and are in the process of contacting passengers in line with our policies and procedures." So this, again, is not uncommon. Like collapsing, unfortunately passing, medically, like sometimes in cases they do land to the nearest airport depending on how severe the case is.
Yeah.
But in this case, they were like obviously still going to continue on their path.
Nope.
You're like, no, ma'am. No, ma'am. I'm done.
No, thank you.
Get me off this plane. So that's your weird story of the week. Unfortunate story of the week, as my dog is biting himself in the background. Oliver, child, what are you doing? In our general news, though, I know a couple of things have been picked up when it comes to Miami Herald, like we talked about earlier, and Newsweek. You have a story in our general news that is of interest.
Yes. So Meghan Markle, well, actually, we don't know what the real story is because Page Six ran a new article about Meghan Markle and WME. Obviously, WME is on everybody's lips because of, Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds and Justin Baldoni and all the drama and how it relates to WME, but this has nothing to do with them. So apparently it's being reported that it's being reported... It's being reported that Meghan Markle has been dropped by WME. Now, her people, presumably, because there's another source that says that's absolutely not true, and reps for WME have said that's absolutely not true. She has not been dropped. But the rumors are, and there are a number of solid sources, claim that Meghan Markle was dropped by WME because she was too demanding and she was too difficult to work with. Now, we've heard these things about her. We had the Spotify employees that came out a few weeks ago. But so what it sounds like is WME may have dropped Meghan Markle personally as a client, but it appears they may still be representing her Archwell Foundation. So they still have some projects that they're working on.
They're not representing Archwell. As ever?
I don't believe they're representing as
I'm not saying as a joke. I'm just like,
no,
are we now representing her as her businesses instead of her?
I don't know. It doesn't say anything about as ever. I'm sure they were like as ever, as if, no thank you. But it doesn't seem like they're personally representing her. Or maybe they are, but maybe in an unofficial capacity. I don't know, because there are conflicting sources that Page Six has. They're like, we have really strong sources that say she absolutely has been dropped, and she was dropped a while ago. And then we have other sources that claim that they're technically still representing Archwell. So it's uncertain what the real situation is. But we do know she has her Netflix film kind of. Maybe that's like the caveat. Like technically they helped broker this Netflix deal. And so they represented her through the Netflix deal, so they're going to see through the project, but like they technically aren't booking any new deals for her. I don't know.
I'm not sure. I mean, we'll see what happens. I mean, WME has definitely been in the talk of a lot of representation. As we know, they dropped Mr. Justin Baldoni. I think anyone who maybe in their new strategy is not a positive, let's call press driver. Maybe they're in this strategy where they're like, we don't want to do business with this person, unfortunately.
Yeah, well, not many people seem to be wanting to work with Meghan Markle these days. But one person that does want to get to work is Miss Kelly Bensimon from the Real Housewives of New York. It's funny, in some Bravo news, Andy Cohen just went on his Radio Andy show this week, and I guess Kelly Bensimon was on Page Six's podcast, and she claims that she obviously everybody now recognizes the Real Housewives of New York reboot is a total flop and the cast is just not a great cast. So Kelly Ben-Simone says she would love to return to the series, but not with that cast. She's like, definitely not that cast. So she's like, I sent Andy Cohen a list of names on who he should bring onto the show instead of those people. And Andy is now addressing it.
Again?
That's what she recommends. But that's what she said, that she just gave Andy some names and she would love to return to it. So Andy's giving more context into that. And he's like, she does email me very often, actually. And even though she's like one of the least popular or liked housewives. And he's like, she does email me often. And she did send me a list. But the list that she sent me was a list of all her friends in New York. And she was pitching that she is the center of Real Housewives of New York. And anybody that has watched Real Housewives of New York knows what a laughable proposal that would be, to make Kelly Ben-Simone the center of the show, because she was kind of the wackadoodle back when she was on the show originally.
I would have no idea, because I am not educated in Bravo, apparently, which is not far from the truth. I've also seen a couple things where people and cast members who have been on Beverly Hills, including Miss Lisa Rinna lately, said it is the Titanic. Everyone knows it's the Titanic, and that they're courting Lisa to come back on. And she was on a podcast I saw the other day too, and she's like, never in my 50s, 60s did I see myself being on The Housewives. You know, it's not my trajectory. So
yeah,
I don't know if there's going to be a big shakeup again for a lot of Bravo stuff. Like we've been saying, like, unfortunately, Bravo was big in the 2010s, you know, like that was the reality network. And now that we're in the 2020s, there's Netflix, there's Hulu, there's so many different streaming platforms where you can get more reality shows. And then we have franchises like The Traitors bringing even more reality stars across different networks. So Bravo has to get really creative and bring a new series, or they have to reinvigorate its current series to make it more interesting, because it's not the talk of the town anymore, unfortunately.
Yeah, and I think they did a really good job when they launched like Ultimate Girls Trip, right? I think that was exciting. We had the veterans, like the biggest all-stars of the different franchises that were coming together and doing these mashup shows. People really enjoyed Ultimate Girls Trip. I thought it did really well. Season 3 was a bit of a flop, and then obviously season 4, you know, ended up getting scrapped, which killed the series altogether after the Brandi Glanville, Caroline Manzo allegations came up and Brandi got fired. But I think that was a really good idea. Now they have a new show called Love Hotel, where they have 4 of the veteran housewives. I believe it's Giselle Bryant, Ashley Darby, Luann de Lesseps, and Shannon Bedore are all moving into a hotel together, and they're going to be with a bunch of single bachelors. And it was Joel Kim Booster, who's the host. I know they just released their first promo, and he was kind of enthralled in a lot of drama for dragging Shannon Bedore after they wrapped production for that series. And so they just released their promos, and it's kind of funny because there's no Joel Kim Booster in any of these promos. So who knows what capacity he'll even have on the series now. I remember we talked about that when it was first going down, but it was just interesting that we've now gotten 2 promos for Love Hotel. So I think they're trying to revive, or at least use some of their legacy housewives as veterans on these shows. I mean, I think MTV has done a really good job of that, with taking people from like The Challenge and reinventing the concepts of The Challenge, or The Real World, and kind of putting them all. Teen Mom, they're mashing up these different shows and taking the biggest talent and trying to repurpose them, which I think is smart. Bravo should probably take notes. I think, you know, Ultimate Girls Trip was a really strong concept that they should absolutely continue to lean into. And I'm still hopeful that we will get that 4th season of Ultimate Girls Trip at some point.
I feel like, honestly, people want new talent and a new format. Like, I think this Love Hotel thing is very interesting, but it's not piquing my interest to watch.
Well, you don't watch Housewives, though.
I mean, that's the thing, is no one, like you've said before, no one's watching Housewives anymore.
Yeah.
And so it's like, why are we going to take the Housewives and go into new formats? It's like, why not try a bunch of new formats with a variety of different people, whether it also be Housewives and others. But it's like, if you don't watch Housewives and you're not following it, then the Housewives getting introduced to new format after format. It's like, what's the draw for us? Yeah. I only, you know, Joel Kim Booster, I'm familiar with his work, his stand-up. So I'm like, okay, like, I don't know these other people. So for those who are not Housewife watchers, or at least in like specific franchise watchers, what's going to draw them in unless they have someone in their franchise that they are really interested in?
Yeah, Bravo needs to hook a new audience. I think right now the mashup shows just keep the current audience re-engaged, but I think a lot of them, like myself, are kind of fatigued in general, not really interested. And I think they're going to need to find a way to tap into other viewers that aren't watching Bravo right now. And I don't think I agree with you. I don't think utilizing their veteran talent is going to hook new people.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, Traders, I think, is doing a really good job. Like, Traders very much having their moment. I mean, this isn't their best season, but I think that was a great way to integrate talent from different networks, taking that veteran talent.
You have to look at, like, Traders was interesting because we'll get into this in a minute in our other segment. It's a new format. It came on the scene at the right time. The Circle was a great format. There's a new format that needs to be created for Bravo because it's the same format over and over and over again. We have Summer House. You follow people in a house. You have Below Deck. You follow people in a boat. It's still following people. There's no reality competitions. There's no documentary-esque feature. There's no scripted series. And so it's a lot of like following all of these people, but we need to find some new reality formats.
Yeah, I agree.
But in terms of other formats in the podcast space, I'm sure you've been keeping up with this headline, or maybe not. At least you've been following probably the Alix Earle SiriusXM deal. So you and I have talked about this a little bit. It's a lot of different people come in and out when it comes to publications. We've had obviously Amazon trying to get into signing more podcasts. We've had Spotify. SiriusXM's like, let me put my hat in the ring and see if I can get any flowers. It seems that this has been an interesting deal. I've seen a lot of people talking about the Unwell network and how it's kind of failing, unfortunately, in its user demographics and resonating aside from Alex Cooper. So I've seen a couple videos of
people aren't listening to Harry Jowsey's 4th podcast.
Oh, well, you said it.
I like Harry.
Yeah. So here's the thing. This is the title of this article that started making its rounds. It said, Alix Earle's Hot Mess podcast dropped by Alex Cooper's Unwell network, and this was an exclusive from Variety. So, as we know, Alex Cooper has been making her entirety when it comes to the Unwell network. Mm-hmm. We had Seriously Unwell because Sirius XM. A lot of people have been saying, though, she's just been signing a lot of these podcasters. But the thing is, they don't have a lot of, let's say, like strong connections with Alex's audience at times, or strong marketing to help bring them in. So when people obviously saw these new formats coming to SiriusXM, we had the Daily Dirty, we have a couple others. We obviously have some friends who are part of these other formats, but the audience of Alix is saying, we didn't really get to be involved in this community making process, like the marketing, which is kind of, it seemed like missing the mark. I saw some girl who said, if Alix got a fake casting call together and like even did some sort of sketches to get us familiar with these people before the announcement. It was just like a lot of different faces, as many are saying, put together, and it's hard for them to keep up. But this development in terms of the Unwell network, I guess sources say that SiriusXM is no longer going to be selling ads for Alix Earle's Hot Mess, which Alix Earle was one of the first few in the Unwell network signed. I remember that
first one announced.
Yeah. They did the whole UTA sketch at the offices, and it's unclear, but all it says in here is the Unwell network has renounced all rights to Hot Mess so that Earle can freely explore future opportunities. Some are assuming there's a beef of some sort, but the move comes after a massive like shift for Alix Earle, of course. So people thought this rift started when Alix Earle skipped the Unwell Super Bowl party in New Orleans, even though she was in town. So it is very interesting because, like, obviously Alix Earle has a lot of Super Bowl involvement as of late, and Alex Cooper in the area, you think that like there'd be a lot of synergy and room to work with each other, do something, uplift the other podcasts, whatever it may be. So people thought there was a feud. But right, in August of 2023, this signing happened. People thought it made sense. Like they seem Alex and Alex, like cool, tight. But But there are others pretty lonesome with Madeline Argy. There are a few others. I don't know. I don't know what this means. Like, what do you speculate?
Okay. So I think that when it comes to the two Alexes specifically, I think that there's likely some drama. And I think that this is probably a situation similar to Alex Cooper when she left Barstool with Call Her Daddy, when she had the whole fallout with Sophia. Not saying that this is a personal fallout between the two Alexes, but what I am saying is that I think that there's probably some sort of fight over the IP. There's some sort of creative direction. Maybe Alex doesn't feel like Cooper is supporting her that much or whatever. It doesn't seem to me like Alex Cooper really gives a shit about this Unwell network. Somebody probably talked her into this being a good idea, but even the strategy and the talent that they're going after. Not that Harry Jowsey's not a strong talent. He's probably the only one that I really know from all of these people that she's signing shows with, but like, they're all influencer types, and I think a lot of networks and agencies are just going after who they think is popular, right? Not somebody that has longevity in the game, not somebody that can be a strong podcast host. And I think with Alex Cooper, she built this brand over having a very strong connection with her audience. And what she did was not continue to keep the audience engaged. And so when they're introduced to all of these new people, they don't know who the fuck these people are. And the reality is these people also have their own niche audience. So I think from a higher level brand perspective, they were signing all of these people thinking that they'll bring their audiences over to Unwell without realizing Alex's audience isn't converting over to these other people because Alex isn't selling them, right? She's not showing us who these people are enough, and it doesn't seem like she cares about them enough to get her audience to care about them enough. So and also, like, let's be honest, like, somebody that's listening to Alex Cooper's podcast doesn't care about a dating podcast or whatever with Harry Jowsey. I like Harry. I've had him on my show a number of times. We've collabed before. I personally enjoy him, but I'm not listening to his podcast. And I just think Alex is her community is engaged to her. And I think they're starting to lose that connection to her the higher she climbs up. And I don't think she cares about her audience as much anymore. I don't think she needs to, right? She's just in a different bracket now. And I think she thinks all this water deal with the Unwell water and the Unwell network, I just don't think she's selling these other people to her audience, and that's the core basis of her demographic, of the people that are going to tune in and support her.
Yeah, and the other thing is I'm looking through the comments of this Variety Instagram post they made about the article. A couple different things come up. People say, is this because of political different views? Obviously, Alex had some things that came up. People think it's mostly business disagreements.
What are the political disputes?
She had some posts that were a lot of people saying, like, this is racist. A lot of the things that she said online, that's from early
Cooper
content.
or what's the
Alex
other
Earle. Earle. So I think I have to go back and check those things, but I think that was one thing that had come up previously. But most people think it's business disagreements.
Yeah.
Because you look at Alix Earle and she nabbed so many Super Bowl deals. You have to think, does she really want to be in podcasting? Do you think she really wants to be in podcasting? Do you think she's wanting to be hot girl, party girl, Charlie XCS adjacent in her brand? Do you think she really wants to continue doing some sort of audio component? The cadence is pretty, frequent. Does this match what she wants 2 years later from when she almost signed, or a year and a half? So it's fast sometimes. It's really hard to get people to want to do things and to be motivated. And I don't know if she's motivated to do this as well.
No, and I think she doesn't need the Unwell network, and she doesn't need Alex Cooper. I think she's set herself in a category of her own. Again, I think this is exactly the same situation that we saw when Alex Cooper left Barstool. She became too big for the network. Her show was too big, and she was ready to leave. And obviously the network's going to want to keep her, but I think it was some sort of business dispute. And you have to also realize too, and we know a lot of these people, that a lot of them don't really want to be podcasters. They don't want to have a podcast. They just want to be important. They want to be relevant. They want to have a show because they want to say that they have their own show. But unless you actually have the talent, the skill set, the drive and determination, and the tenacity to really stay in the game, you're not going to last in this game. I've done this for a very long time. I see people come and go. I've had, ebbs and flows over my 10 years in the podcasting world. And I can very easily spot when people aren't going to last in this world. And I don't think that Alix Earle, I don't think this was her thing. I think she's just in a different, she has a different audience that's interested in different things. And it was a smart move for her to make at the start. She definitely, helped Alex Cooper launch this Unwell network, but I think she's ready to move on to bigger and better things, and she doesn't need this anymore.
Yeah, I did also verify the comment I said earlier just to make sure we get it right. Yeah, last year a lot of comments did come up about Alix Earle. She had a bunch of posts when she was 13 and like when she was throughout the course of her time on socials, just making some racist slurs and other things specifically. I don't think that has anything to play with this here. I think it's more like looking at where her business is and where she wants to go.
Yeah.
But that's going to be, I feel like, put my money on it. I think we're going to see a lot of different changes for Alex Cooper right now. And when it comes to the Unwell network,
Sirius XM is going to be a make or break. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but this is going to be a big make or break for her.
I think it's going to be probably a big couple changes to the programming. Probably after a 1 to 3 month test flight, they're going to say, here's what's working and here's what's not. We need to change things up. So she might be really involved or she might not be.
I think she's going to have to be more involved if they want her audience to convert over to these other people that, you know, that they're going to want. Like, because I mean, think about it, even whether it's bigger talent or smaller talent, if her audience isn't familiar with them, like Alix has to introduce us to them. Alix has to let her audience get excited about who these people are and why she chose them and why she picked them to be part of this Unwell network. And I mean, I think even jumping from podcast to radio is going to be a really hard transition. We've seen people go from radio to podcast, but that's because podcast is the future and radio isn't. Radio's struggling to hold on. So to get her audience to care, to subscribe to SiriusXM, and then to stay loyal to SiriusXM by subscribing, a podcast is free. You have to subscribe to listen to SiriusXM. You have to pay.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, in our last little bit, I know we have a quick little tangent to get to with spoilers. I'm sure everyone's seen it. I'm sure everyone's upset.
Yeah.
We're hitting the hour mark, and I want to get these last little choice words in we have. I'm so pissed. I'm so pissed about Traitors because I loved Carolyn. I loved her so much. And I think that low-key, the entire franchise is just kind of like on the edge right now of like, how do we change this up for the future so we have a better performing season? Because I think this season has left a lot of people disappointed in some way. Like,
it's not a good season, and the talent that they have isn't really shining. Like we've said, they got rid of a lot of their strong players early on that, you know, we didn't have anybody that, like, when Tom Sandoval and Gabby are the two that we're really kind of riding for. That's not to say that they're bad, but like there were so many other stars that were initially cast on this show that, like, when we're kind of appreciating Tom Sandoval on the show, like that kind of lets us know that the writing's on the wall and this is not a good season. Even Dylan Efron, I feel like he has his moments, but he's also kind of boring, where he just doesn't really deliver, right? Like he has moments where we're kind of rooting for him, but then he has other moments where he kind of just like falls into the shadows. Dolores isn't really strong. Brittany, I think, had the potential to be like a strong, you know, antagonist, and she just isn't leaning into that enough. Iger is fucking
Gabby's not
boring.
getting screen time.
Gabby's not getting screen time. I just don't. I think because she's probably, you know, they can only keep her for. Gabby's a great character for like light levity, and same with Tom Sandoval. These light breaks in levity on the show, but like they can't carry the show altogether, right?
And neither can Ivar.
Ivar is fucking boring. He's not interesting at all. Like, and so was Sam. But like, when it comes to the Traitors, were terrible this season. I think Bob the Drag Queen was strong, but we got rid of him too soon. I think Boston Rob was a really strong strategist.
I loved the season from the start, but then it turned.
Yeah, Boston Rob, I think, was a strong player, but ultimately played the game very poorly and got himself tooted and booted. And so all we have left are Carolyn and Danielle. And I feel like they weren't even people that, and like, I feel like people just kind of fell in love with Carolyn by default, not because they were necessarily in love with her from the start. I think they thought she was kind of wacky.
I think she's a fun, kooky, just like players in the game were like, you carrying this out, Oscar. Like, even us in the beginning, like, do we think she's going to make it? And her personality, like, shining through, everyone was like, I don't think she's going to make it. And the fact that she just served as such, like, comedic relief and fun for, like, so much of the show just made everyone be like, how is this girl still in it? And no one's like detecting her. She obviously got detected later, but I think she was there because also in the traitors, she was at least suspected to be a traitor based on like
Yeah.
her kookiness of potentially being all over the place. But her final speech was great.
I disagree because I think the only reason she made it this far is because the last two traders really played a bad game. Boston Rob and Bob the Drag Queen, they caused so much chaos and they made themselves such, polarizing people at the round table that they made themselves easy targets. And I don't think like we only fell in love with her because we had to. And I don't think people like Danielle is such a an unlikable person in the game that like if we have to root for somebody, I think Carolyn is quirky and I think she ultimately won everybody's hearts, but I think she would have done that whether she was a traitor or not a traitor. And I don't think had she not had Boston Rob and Bob the Drag Queen taking the attention off of her and putting it on themselves, I don't think she would have made it far as a traitor, because the second that we had them eliminated from the game, she started to fumble the ball. And we started to see her fumble that ball very clearly, and Danielle took advantage of that. But I think Danielle is just such an unlikable traitor and just such an unlikable person in this game that like you don't really have anybody that you're rooting for at this point.
I feel like Carolyn could have definitely made it to the end if the whole Boston Rob thing didn't happen. She would have been undetectable. She would have been like in the shadows, obviously not as much attention grabbing. I think people fell in love with the way she said Bob the Drag Queen and like just her phrases. So I think that everyone really thought thick and through that she was it. But as soon as they were out and the focus became a little bit more on the two of them, I think she could have at least made it to like the finals and been like a little undetected, because just kind of like we have Dylan, we have like all these other people, were just blindly, yes, like you are such a genuine personality, but for her, she got caught with Danielle over and over again.
Yeah, and I think which also shows that they're just not great traders. They were too busy fighting with each other rather than fighting against the faithfuls. And I think if you have to play a strong game and think about how you're going to make it to the end. And if you're trying to kill all the traders off, it's not a smart move, and it's ultimately going to expose your game in the end.
And it's not a smart move for Danielle to have recruited Brittany, because she should have recruited Dylan, because they're all like, it has to be a girl. Now you just put the chances up for them voting out a girl. You could literally sit here, you could have picked Ivar, you could have picked someone who is so faithful through and through and really taken the heat off of you and just eliminated them.
I thought it's smart for her to bring Brittany into the game because there's already heat on Brittany. And listen, as a trader, you don't want to make it to the end with your traders. You want to be the last man standing. So you're going to want to bring in people that are going to be a shield, right? Just like season 1, they wanted to make Kate Chastain the shield because that was the smarter game. Everybody already had heat on Kate and thought that she was a traitor, but they kept her in the game as long as they could because she was that shield. So if you're going to recruit somebody this late in the game, you're going to want it to be somebody that can be your shields, that they're going to come after and eliminate and think that they've won yet another traitor to keep yourself undetectable. And so I think Brittany was a smart choice, but it's also a really dumb choice, because she's a smart choice in the sense that there's already heat on her, so she can very easily be the next target and Danielle can take it all the way. But it was a dumb choice because Danielle has already married herself to Brittany so much in the game that people see them as a package deal, that now people are going to think the two of them are traitors together. The smarter move would have been to pick Dolores and sell everybody on the fact that a housewife has to be a traitor. It's a housewife, it's a female, it has to be her. And make her the shield, let the cast kill off Dolores and be like, she was the traitor from the beginning, we knew it. And then hopefully, think that there were no traitors left in the game and sail to the end. But I just don't think Danielle's that smart. And I think she's a terrible traitor, and I hope she doesn't win.
Well, that is the truth. Well, that is the end of our episode as well. Hit the hour mark, hit it hard, hit it in the back of the head. Where can they find more glorious traitor news and more glorious Meghan Markle news, Mr. Zachary?
Here on the Pop Report every Wednesday and Friday, guys. Subscribe on YouTube, listen on Apple, listen on Spotify, all the places. Be sure to show us some love. Drop a comment, leave a review. We'll shout you out next week.
And we'll see you in our new studio sometime soon.
Yay.
Bye.
Bye.